Hi, today I'd like to talk about what we do in the due diligence process when we go on site to an apartment complex where we've already signed a purchase and sale agreement. We have a limited amount of time in order to perform our due diligence steps. So when we go on site, it's a combination of really partly the financial due diligence as well as our physical due diligence. So that's two of the three. The first phase of due diligence, as we had mentioned in a prior video, was legal. So now we have financial and physical due diligence. So when we go on site, some of the things we want to look at are the books and records, obviously. We're gonna verify a certain number of expenses depending on how much activity there is. It could be similar to an audit, or we may be able to go over all of the expenses in detail if it's a smaller complex. We always look at the entire rent roll. All right, so what we want to do is view the rent roll, see how much is being collected from each tenant, making sure the deposits tie out to the monthly rent roll. We want to take a look at the leases, compare what we see in the leases to what we're seeing as far as payments coming in from those tenants. The other thing we want to be careful of is that when the owners realize they're going to sell to us, that they don't do things like tell a delinquent tenant, a tenant who's delinquent in payments, well, we'll take your security deposit and apply that toward that month's rent where you're delinquent. That way when the new purchasers come in, they wouldn't say this to the tenant, but when the new purchasers come in, it'll look like everybody's up to date. So that's something we have to look out for. The other thing is in the lease, did they try to add tenants that maybe didn't qualify? Or did they do some kind of a tenant's concession at the back end of the lease knowing they were going to sell? So what I'm saying is maybe there's a certain credit score that's required and they've got vacancies that they know it's a little too much, so that's going to bring down the possibility of the sale price. So knowing that, the possibilities are you lower the credit criteria. You lower the income criteria. You allow tenants in that don't meet the standards that you had already set up for current tenants, okay? On the back end concession, you may say, look, you don't have to pay the 12-month rent on a 1-year lease. So those are things that we need to look for when we are out performing our due diligence phase. The other thing is, you really want to try to get into all the apartments. Now, sometimes that's tough. If it's a 500-unit complex, are you going to get into all of the apartments? Maybe not, but you got to try. So you want to be sure that these apartments, if they told you there are apartments that can be leased and are vacant, you want to get into those to make sure that there's not work that needs to be performed, which may leave it vacant for another month. You want to make sure that there are no issues with bugs, for example, especially if you're in a southern warm climate. You want to look for cockroaches. You want to look at their bill payments to make sure that they've been paying for pest control. And another thing with the expenses is you want to make sure that they're not delinquent in payments, which would drive up their net operating income if they're on a cash basis, which means that they would expect to have you pay more for the complex. So these are just some of the things that we look at when we're doing an on-site visit. And obviously the overall condition of the building and the parking area, the lighting, all of these play a factor when we go out on an on-site visit. The physical location, our physical due diligence as part of the overall due diligence that we perform. So that's a little bit of detail of what we go through And as I said, we have a limited amount of time to do this. So we got to get in there, got to get it done, get out. We want to close as soon as we can and get going and make some money for our investors. So it's been another great time talking to you. I appreciate the time you put in watching these videos, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.